All right, I'm gonna see who shows up to this, but this is kind of the office hours for today. I think I realized that I messed up the calendar invite, so I don't know if Eugene and Hamel are actually gonna show up today. I'm kind of been ghosted, but yeah, leave any questions in the chat, and I can just so I can see if anyone can leave a message. And yeah, I'm happy to just actually answer any questions. I didn't really have anything specific that I want to talk about today. Uh, got a new haircut? No, it's just the same haircut. It's just super long, and this is not that nice. So I just keep this up. Oh yeah, what do you think about O1? I think it's great. I have not tried it yet, but one of the interesting things they talk about is like the ability to do reasoning more, and specifically being able to do math better. And so I have someone on my team, Ivan, who is in the process of buying like math exams. Like we're trying to buy math exams that have not been published yet. Um, and if we can do that, then we're going to be able to basically have an evaluation set that we pretty much know has never been seen by OpenAI. And then we'll quickly just release a article on just like what the evals look like for something like that. If it does really well, then we know it's doing a good job. But I suspect for some of these tasks, it's gonna make sense. I'm pretty excited. To add to that, it doesn't actually look like it has tool calling yet, or not. I mean, so it has tool calling, but it doesn't have a structured output mode, and so it's gonna come back and just mean that instructor is gonna be something we need to use to do some of this work. Um, yeah, I think Sonnet 3.5 is really good. So I just really I'm curious because if why not generate a synthetic data set? So who's generating it? Like, am I good enough at math to make hard math questions? Maybe, but I can do better things with my time. If I use an LLM to generate synthetic math questions, then it's definitely questions the math the LLM can answer, right? It's like I can't create math questions harder than the ones I could probably solve without a lot of thinking, and it's not worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Like I think I'd rather just buy a data set. I am part of a writing club and was thinking of creating a Rexes to look for Twitter users who might resonate with an essay. Any ideas on how to start or thinking about the problem? Yeah, I would probably. So the question is like, can I actually build a recommendation system? Maybe not, but can I build a matching system? Probably. And the way I might do it is a couple things, right? I might say, let me take the past 200 tweets and extract topics, extract writing styles, extract things that they think about, and then just do a search for content that aligns with that, right? So maybe they say, oh, Jason writes a lot about the ethics of mathematics. Okay, then can I convert that into a search query that looks for summaries of books? And usually what's going to happen is you can probably find books that talk about the ethics of mathematics, and there's a matching process there. And then you can do that slowly and basically build out data sets of just user and book matchings. And then you can use that and maybe fine tune like a Cohere model to improve your recommendation system. So it's two parts. One is given a summary of a Twitter bio, can I find similar book bio summaries? Once I have the summaries and click data, can I fine tune a Cohere re-ranking model to use that click data? I think that would be the quickest thing. Suggestion for how to create. I think so. I mean, so the question is like, how can I embed complex Excels and does it make sense? For the most part, I just take Excel sheets and I turn them into Markdown and I put in the prompt. Things like GPT-4o and things like Claude are pretty good at reading some of the stuff. But then it depends on what kind of data processing you want to run on the table. Do I want to do aggregate analysis or do I want to do like precision recall over the rows of the data, right? So am I asking questions like, what's the total revenue? Or I'm asking the questions like, here is a readout. Um, what were all the times someone spent too much money? Right? Really, really subjective. Then a language model needs to look at the rows and reason. Depending on which mode, you can either put it in the prompt or you can put it in the prompt, but give the language model access to like a pandas data frame. And then what you can do is you can just make sure that the language model is able to write Python code and run that code in some kind of code environment. And then if you can do that, you kind of service both parts of both reading the table and writing code to do aggregates and data analysis on that table. That's generally how I think about building out something like this. All right. Yeah. What did everyone else think of for? I feel like I was really caught off guard on what is actually possible. Like I knew they were going to come up with this, but like I'm not going to try out that much until maybe like next week because I have some proposals I need to write. But yeah, I still want to yeah, finish up those proposals, and then I'll probably try it more when I actually go to OpenAI Dev Day. That's the thing I'm most excited for. I've been in calls all day, so I haven't really had an opportunity to try out of O1. Sorry, I missed a question about O1. Have you experimented with exploring inference time compute? Not really. I don't really think of myself at operating at that layer of like LLM stuff. Like an LLM is like because also I'm biased, like I'm the creative instructor. To me, LLMs are just like translation layers, and the quality of translation will go up, but I don't worry about it too much, right? It's just like, can I take my data and convert it to a different kind of data? Like, I don't really do a lot of like code generation and stuff like that. A lot of maybe prompting, but it is what it is. Thoughts on LLM observability frameworks, and are they necessary for early development stages? Uh, I think it's a good habit, right? It's almost like writing code. Like you don't really write code unless you have a system to deploy. But if you build the habit of using observability and of using good testing, your life is usually better, right? Like same with debugging. Like just because you don't have to use it doesn't mean you shouldn't. And really, you want to just have good habits and good form. That's really how I think about it. For the most part, I think the goal really is to think about latency rather than anything else. Uh, let me just keep jumping into questions. Oh, yeah, I definitely think that's true. Not target does O1 looks more like reflection. Does it differ from reflection prompting to existing? Yes, I'm pretty sure what it's actually doing is it's trying to do some kind of like tree search on like the token space, right? It's it, I don't know how to describe because I don't know the implementation. I might have to get David on the YouTube at some point to ask him about it. But um, one is a prompting technique. Another one is like actually doing probably some kind of tree search over like the token space. Um, Whereas Pain of Thought is kind of just like adding more tokens into a different path of the space. So I think they're very different. Any garment pickups lately you're stoked on? Yeah, oh, this is Yoji, the pants Yoji, the glasses Margiela, General Monster. I'm a little overly dripped. Have you tried Copilot within a RAG pipeline? Any thoughts and opinions on it? I have not. I'm very excited to try it out. I just do not have that much time these days. Yeah, for the most part, I just think it's a little bit safer and more scalable. Like I am either working with I only work with big companies now, and big companies is in people who are like 5, 6 people working on a product together, and it's just easier to think about vector databases and re-rankers than using Copilot or using Colbert. But if you were part of the course that I taught earlier this month, Ben had a really great talk on Copilot that we're going to upload on YouTube at some point once I find the editors and all that. So let's figure that out first. I have not tried too many things in production for any of these like late interaction models, mostly because they're like harder to spin up. Like I don't really prototype things like that anymore. Most of my time is either consulting or writing. You mentioned hiring a VA. How has that worked out for you? It's been great. I love it a lot. My VA like saves my life all the time. She's like always right. I feel very grateful. She does book business flight tickets, which is great for me. But as long as I don't look at the credit cards, it's fine. I like it. How much time do you think it will take for O1 to become usable in an enterprise setting? The 20 to 10 to 20-second inference time is not desirable. But, you know, how long does it take for your intern to respond to you? More than 20 seconds. Like the best models are not competing with like dumber models. I think the best models are competing with humans. And there are a lot of workflows that 10 to 20 seconds of inference time is super desirable because I just want a good job, right? I have a LLM write sales proposals. If that sales proposal is 20% better with 20 seconds of inference time, I'll take it. If it's 20% better, cost me $10 and took an hour, I would probably still take it because it might just make me more money. So I think it's fine. How usable will it be for client facing like chatbots? Probably not as much, right? But there's a lot of workflows that don't need to take very fast. So a lot of workflows that don't need to be very fast. Right? How do you do domain specific re-ranking? Every business should be doing this. And all you need to do is collect pairs, right? You need the ability to say, this thing is similar than that thing. And if you have data like that and you collect it, you're going to be able to do a re-ranking job. If you then also say, this is similar to that, and this is also dissimilar from some other thing, you're going to do even better, right? Ultimately, I think the recommendation is you should just be using Cohere's re-ranking models. Like there's no reason to use anything else but Cohere re-ranking models. I'm not getting paid to say this. I really just think that if you want something that is just going to be better within a day, that is the right choice. I'm pretty bought on the Cohere. Like, Ivan, if you're listening, let me invest. What are your go-to embedding models? Probably OpenAI. Outside of OpenAI, I would just fine tune my own embedding models. More importantly, I would rather just I'm gonna call this out real quick. I'm gonna call go-to embedding models would just be OpenAI and then fine tuning like BGE, like base 1.5. Good point on leveraging observability for latency. Any recommended frameworks? Inspect, Burr. I kind of just use Python code. By the way, Eugene joined the. Eugene, I sent you a link on text. Yeah. All right. No worries. No worries. Yeah, cheers. Yeah. I just think I just use regular Python. It doesn't work, especially with e-commerce data set. I don't know if you know my background, but I trained multimodal models in 2016 to do e-commerce and recommendation systems. Two products are similar if they were bought together. Two products are similar if the people buy them, right? All of recommendation systems effectively is building re-rankers for e-commerce data sets. And you can do that with like triplet loss models. So I disagree that re-rankers do not do well with e-commerce data sets. All right. Hey, Eugene.
Hey, sorry about that.
No
Meeting
worries.
overran.
I've been buying us time. We're good. We're good.
Wow, a lot of questions.
Yeah. What do you think this is the end of traditional prompt engineering? Cognition blog notes that models like O1 outperform direct prompts and more sensitive to unnecessarily tokens. I think I'm gonna just mute you for a second. I think prompt engineering is just about being able to describe your products. Sorry, describe what you want, and like that skill is not gonna go away. Like, is it the end of traditional prompt engineering? Like, you're not gonna have to like beg for tokens, like beg for tips. Yeah, probably. But I think real prompt engineering is not about those kind of tricks, but really describing a project well. I see. Yeah, I definitely agree that coherent rankers does not work for in-binding models, but then I would just focus on training, like, I guess for e-commerce. Hey, why don't you talk about this, Eugene? How would you train domain-specific re-rankers for e-commerce settings?
So, what kind of re-rank are we talking about? Are we talking about recommendation, search, embedding retrieval?
I think so. I think it's like just a retrieval recommendation system thing.
I actually wouldn't retrain a re-ranker. I would actually just train a ranker from scratch based on the behavioral data that you have. So a lot of this relies on behavioral data, right? So yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, search. Search was the one they said.
So search. Okay. So can you share a bit more detail? Like, are you saying that customer is entering a query, you're trying to figure out which of the items are the most relevant for this? Is that somewhere in the ballpark, Jason?
I think so. Eugene, it says like your sound is like really loud. Let me. I
My
don't know if
sounds.
I don't have master.
Gosh. Okay, let me look at my
Oh, I can do it. I can do it.
settings. Yeah, if I was thinking about it for search, I think firstly for me, for discovery or Rexis or search kind of use cases, putting language aside, I find that behavioral data really trumps content level data. So if let's say if I was searching for an iPhone, most of the times you find that people actually click on iPhone instead of an iPhone adapter or iPhone case or iPhone iPhone screen protector. So if you're just purely doing on lexical, like all of them will be hits. But if you are able to train downstream, just train a ranker that re-ranks it based on your customer behavioral data. And of course, you can have multiple objective functions like clicks or purchase or wish lists. That would perform better. But this is completely nothing to do with how I usually address this. Is nothing to do with language modeling.
Yeah,
Minimal. Yeah.
that's fair. All right, let's jump into this. I know you guys talked about synthetic data set generation. How do you approach or get started? Any recommendations? I only start with Ragus. How to improve it? Synthetic data generation. I think it's really hard. When I do it myself, it feels very easy. But when I ask other people to do it, it's very hard to have them consider things like complexity, like think about variance and diversity. Like you almost want to know what good data looks like, and that has been a challenge. What do you think?
Okay, so Jason, could you clarify synthetic data generation? Is it for fine-tuning models or is it for evaluating models or in general?
Let me look at the question.
I know you guys.
I think for evaluation, because you mentioned Ragus.
Okay, yeah, if it's for evaluation, how I like to do this actually is my favorite trick is to get a strong model to do it, and you can consider that those as the examples that pass, and of course you have a somewhat human in the loop, and then you kind of get a weaker model to do that as well. Yes, it will be slightly out of distribution, but a lot of times you'll find that a lot of those mistakes, the strong model will make as well. It's just that a weaker model just does it in higher propensity, higher occurrence, and that's how you get more defects. Ideally, you want some kind of that will help you get a balanced data set.
Nice.
So that's how I think about it.
Eugene, I don't know if you follow this, but do you know about like wide event tracking?
What does that mean?
So I like to basically have very, very fat logs.
Mm,
Like I don't want to log like a single product ID and a single co-occurrence of like a similar product. I would want to log the query, the text chunks. I want to log the scores for the text chunks, and then I want to log like the latency and then maybe the clicks and all that kind of stuff. But maybe this is like a bad example that we should talk about separately. But how do you collect data in production that you use to train new models, right? I think that's kind of the question. If you have a wide log, you have a single table that you can produce into a data set. If you have skinny logs, you have to do a lot more joins and complexity in the analysis. Does that make any sense?
yeah, I can comment a bit more about that. I think, in general, I can say in general, the logs that most people collect are wide logs.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's for an event. So an event would be like an impression. What are the things that people sees? What are the different associated scores, etc. Or a click. Like when they click, what was it? Everything. So it's like wide. Like what are all the visible items? What was the not visible? What are all the items that were served server side? What are all the items visible on the client side, client viewport? And that's it. And if there's a click, what was the item that's clicked on? So you can think of it that way, right? Essentially has everything. And then after that, for whatever downstream training purposes, you can consume that and denormalize it and break it down. So yeah.
Or let's see what other question. What is your writing process? Oh, I want to hear about yours because mine is like the most.
I
I
know
feel like
Jason's writing
Eugene
process.
sees how I write and like
Crazy.
wants to
I
vanish.
think Joe Benson, your writing process is like insane. It's like it's like why don't you share about your writing process first, then I can share mine. Mine is very,
Yeah,
very different.
I basically just if I want to write anything, I just like command Shift K opens Loom. So I end the call. I was like, all right, thank you. I end the call. Man, Command Shift K. Blah 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 blah. And I'll just talk for like 15 minutes. Okay, I get the URL. I go copy transcript. I open up Claude, Command V, and then I use the text to speech. Clean up this transcript. Do not change any of my words. Keep my tone and keep the writing style. The only thing I need you to do is to correct any transcription errors, add headers, style it in Markdown, and then ask me anything that is ambiguous. And then give me the blog post. And I'll say like, what was this word? What was that word? And I was like, oh, that word is pydantic. This word actually is this. Okay, make it better. Okay, then I copy paste. I open up GitHub. I paste the thing. I add a title. Git commit. Git push. Spins. I copy and I just post it on Twitter, and that takes like 40 minutes.
Yeah, Jason's approach is kind of crazy. It works. It's extremely effective, extremely high throughput, and super fast. How I think about writing is a little bit different, and maybe I can just share my screen very quickly. So here's one. Here's a write-up that Jason and I collaborated on, and it was exactly. It's very similar. We had a discussion. We had a 1 hour discussion, and then we discussed about it. And then I just tried to log all the different things, like what technical skills to consider, what non-technical skills to consider, running the interview loop, etc. But the thing about this is that I realized that as we were chatting, we actually missed out quite a bit of the details.
Yep.
And so I had to add a lot in it. So this is one example. I don't really adopt this approach very much because it's kind of different. The approach that my main process for writing is it usually starts with something that I'm trying to understand a bit more. So in this case, it would be something like LLM as a judge or LLM evaluators. I was trying to form my own opinion to do this. So and essentially it will start with a question. Hey, what do I think of LLM evaluators? And then I'll look at several papers to understand how people are doing LLM evaluators. A lot of this is like consuming other research. And then in the end, I looked at all these papers, like what's my take, and I try to provide an opinionated take. Here's an opinionated take. Here's this tree of how you should do it. Essentially, I what I'm
Can you
trying to do
zoom
is,
in a little bit more?
okay, I'll do that. So essentially,
Yeah.
this is like, you can think of this as like a proposed methodology, or sometimes when I'm writing more stuff that's related to systems, like more system design. And I think of this process as a design document review. So you can consider this as my science methodology review. I'm putting it up there, and I want people to tell me how I'm wrong. That's very important, right? If you can tell me I'm wrong now, I don't have to spend all this time spinning my wheels going down the wrong track. An example of that is like maybe this one, system design for recommendations and search. I have this strong opinion that I think that most recommendations can be simplified into this. So no one has told me I'm wrong yet. In fact, NVIDIA actually built on it to make it 4 stages. So essentially, that's how I write.
NVIDIA was the one that extended your blog post? Oh, he just... Bye, Eugene. I think he closed the tab or something. Well, let's wait for him to come back. There he is.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, NVIDIA extended on it. They asked for the original, like they were asking, hey, can we extend on it? And then I shared, hey, here's the slides. You can just feel free to tweak whatever. They extended on it, presented a KDD, etc., etc.
What year was this? 2022?
2022. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a while back.
Did you
That
ever
was before LLMs.
did you ever read the IGQL? Oh no, yeah, we talked about this with Thule and Shaped AI. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that's basically Flight. That's IGQL. That's everything.
You mean the Instagram one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's why I was like looking at it and trying to simplify the details. I think it's very standard, two-step retrieval and recall.
Yeah.
And I guess the one last example is that I'll share is like, recently I have been very curious about what's the best way to build front end apps. And of course, Hamel and Jason have disagreed. I don't know what's the right way to do it. So essentially, I just try to build the same thing. A very simple one with FastHTML, Next.js, and CivetKit. And I was like, okay, let me just spend a couple of hours to share this with the rest of the world, like what I found. So I ran polls, I spent some time writing out what I learned. So I guess my form of how I choose to write is really, there's only one winner in the way I write. I write for one person mainly, and that's for myself. I write to learn myself. And of course, people get to benefit from it on the side as well. So how should folks choose ideas for writing? I think I have a very strong opinion on this. I think you should write what you are interested in. I think that's the only way for it to be sustainable. I know a lot of people reach out to me about writing advice, and like asking, Eugene, how can I write? How can I go viral? How can I build an audience, etc., etc. Well, you can try to do that, but if you're not intrinsically interested in it, I don't know if you can sustain. It's like Jason's writing, right? It's like the intrinsic motivation is there. He ends a call. It's like, I just need to get this out. Bam, it's out, right? It's the intrinsic motivation there. So you should focus on that.
Yeah. I mean, my motivation is not to learn. Like, my motivation is to practice saying the right thing.
Exactly.
Right. Like,
so
for me,
it's like, who's the number one? Who benefits most from Jason's writing? I
right,
think Jason himself. He gets to practice so many reps.
because like on every sales call, on every podcast, every time I talk to a VC, I can say something in 12 minutes and I'm like, oh shit. Wow, like,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's
because
a powerful for the consultant, I think.
because you refine the message so many times,
Yes.
right? You've wrote it in Loom, you've edited it, you've posted it. It's almost like, and I can say that the same things I'm sharing with you about writing, I've written it about it before. That's why I've already thought about it so much. So yeah. And now if anyone asks me about LLM evaluators, I know what to say, right? Because I have formed my own opinion, and that's what the process of writing is.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just practicing stand up. I'm not like none of my writing is about research. None of my writing is even synthesis. And I think that's the thing, right? Like yours is much more from the perspective of like a scientist. I think that's something that's like very exciting. Like very few people, I think, like you, Eugene, not you, Eugene, you and Hamel. Like who else, really? Lillian Wang.
Lilian Wang, yeah. Shreya,
Yeah, yeah.
Shreya, yeah. Chip,
Very few people.
yeah.
Eugene, is your website open source?
It's not. I'm afraid it's not. But I do have a. It's really just Jackal.
It's
And
Django.
no, Jackal,
Oh,
Jekyll. It's really just a Jackal thing. It's really bare bones Jackal. And there was a point in time I was like really curious about HTML and JavaScript and CSS,
mhm.
and I just tweaked everything from scratch. I don't recommend you do that now. I mean, I'm tired of that now. I actually don't change it anymore. And whenever I have time, I'm gonna just migrate it to a very plain looking website. But it's not open source.
You should
I'm
use
afraid.
MK Docs. I love
Yeah,
MK.
I know. And then that's the thing. I'm just trying to figure out. Maybe I'll build something from scratch again. I actually like net.org. I don't know if you've seen net.org.
Yes. Yeah. Oh.
I mean, I feel like you have to achieve a certain level of status
Yeah,
before you can do a
you need to be a
website.
billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, maybe I can do that one day.
Yeah. Okay. What interesting directions you want to explore? What are interesting directions that you want others to explore because you haven't had the interest or bandwidth to do it yourself?
I can let you go first.
I mean, like my motivations now is not even to like be more technical. I think really it's like I want to be right very quickly. And like my goal is to be like the oracle. When a company comes to me and I said, "Oh, I've seen so much. All right, let me listen to you for like 15 minutes and let me just tell you like 3 things I'm like very confident that you should try." Right? And like and that's basically it. So for me, like talking more on the internet is also about like being wrong more often. Right? Like if Eugene has like writes 3 things and is right 3 times, it's like, oh, I want to say 100 things. 5 of them are right, which is like on average like more things. But then it's because I have to practice like talking to people and like in the moment like figure out what the problem is. And so most of my motivation is like developing the skill of like being right fast.
You know, Amazon, we actually have a leadership principle that's very similar to that. It's called write a lot.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's really hard for you to progress without being right. You have to have good judgment. So that takes a lot of time because, like you mentioned, right? I think you mentioned this before. When you were at Stitch Fix, you were at Flight, you built it, you saw where the rough edges were.
Yeah.
And that takes time, right? It's like a 12-month, 18-month cycle to reflect on your past design decisions and learn.
Yeah, because you just have to be.
Exactly. So that's very valuable. It's like a long term. Personally, for me, one interesting direction I want to explore, I haven't been building small apps for fun recently. I want to do more of that, and that's my whole digging into front end frameworks. Personally, I'm actually very curious. I think there's a lot to do, but there's not a lot of people paying attention to it in terms of the human computer interaction. How can humans interact with computers better? Or how can maybe we have an LLM evaluator, how can a human spot check that easier? So kind of like looking at chain of thought or hidden chain of thought or maybe monosemanticity. But it's not just the technical details, right? It's really understanding. So in a previous role, we just had Excel sheets where people curated. We built a front end that increased throughput by 30x. 30. That's huge. And it's just UX. It's all UX. It's very minimal about technology. So personally, to me, that's quite interesting. Understanding how to make people more effective. Yeah.
How long have I known you? Like when did we meet? Like
AI engineer last year.
conference. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I could have shown you like prototypes for the instructor cloud product.
Yeah.
You did not see them, but
I've not seen that. Yeah.
It was because most of it was data labeling UI.
That's what I'm very interested in. That's why my recent post is just a data labeling UI
Yeah.
as the base. There's gonna be a lot building on top of that.
Yeah, because my goal is like, what if I want to extract multiple entities, like a list of object out of a long document? How do I label that list? It's not going to be one side is like 15 objects and it is a whole document. No, I want you to be able to import citations and attach them to each document and to each object. So the UI is not tend to page; it's single object to 4 cutouts. And then you can tailor a single object to one of the cutouts. And now you have a task that is just like, does this attribute align with this thing? Yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, 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 and no. And then you can go super fast.
That's
No cognitive.
amazing. That's amazing, right? Because I've looked at some UIs where the relevant context is so much.
Yeah.
Right. And then people ask me, it's like, oh, like what's wrong with this? I was just, yeah, clearly it's too much to read. But firstly, it's not even chronological order.
Yeah.
Like even making it chronological, something so simple will improve their efficiency by so much. That's why it's like it really requires a lot of user understanding.
Yeah. But who like very few people have experience in data labeling. And now they have
I
lots of
guess
experience using LLMs.
yeah, and maybe it's just not as sexy, right?
Yeah. I mean,
optimizing the human loop.
there was no way I would make it $1 billion product. So I was like, let's just make it open source and not build any UI.
Yeah.
But like for private companies that have hired me, I have some UI for that.
Yeah, that's
But they're
valuable.
all Streamlit apps. I save everything that's
Streamlit, yeah.
and the
yeah.
UI just statelessly pulls a non-annotated Streamlit application. But yeah, it's a whole fun thing. I don't really have an answer to this question, but what's your favorite inference engine? Mine is just
For me,
LLM.
I usually VLM or even whatever is easiest to get the latest model on, even Hugging Face. Yeah, I don't use local LLMs that much nowadays. So the reason why I wrote this, I can share with you. The reason is actually very interesting. I think this was early last year, right? Like maybe March or April. And then people were asking me, like some of my senior leaders were asking me, hey, no, Eugene, what's the difference between fine tuning or RAG? I mean, we laugh at it now, but at a point in time, like this was not very clear, right? Or like, why do we need evaluation? Or why do we need guardrails? So I was getting a lot of these questions, like almost once or twice a week. And then like Jason, they would say, hey, can you just record like 5 to 7 minutes of you speaking about it, and then I record it and I put it online in like an internal YouTube, and then they like just share it around. And then I realized, okay, these questions just keep coming. How can I up level the organization? So okay, I decided, okay, I'm going to spend some time. I'm going to research what I think are the key patterns, fine tuning, RAG, evals, and a few others like feedback loop. And I'm going to research. I'm going to write all that I think about it. I'm going to write why it's important. I'm going to write just what's enough for non-technical, non-science folks just to understand what it is. And after then I have like the research and everything coming behind that. So that was how I wrote it. Again, it's the same process. It's like I identify 5 or 6 key patterns. I figure out the literature, then I write it, then I synthesize it. Like why is fine-tuning important? Why is RAG important? Like what is it essentially? And then how you can do it. And then I have the literature backing it behind that. So that was it. That was extremely effective. And I think now we've kind of moved past that, right? Like organizations and I guess the world has sort of moved past that. We don't really talk about why is fine tuning necessary or RAG necessary, but instead now we work on the harder problems, which is amazing, which is great.
Very good. When does it make sense to leverage some kind of query expansion and decomposition in your system versus fine tuning over common questions? I personally feel like those are two separate paths.
I felt the same way when I read this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it always makes sense to use query expansion if you want to give language models more capabilities to filter and sort and score things. Whereas fine tuning to me is mostly like a cost thing. And maybe the answer is, oh, I want to be able to fine tune question answer pairs. But what if I ask for the latest news? I can't fine tune that like natively, right? And so there are like two different things I would say.
Yeah. Agree. I don't have much to add beyond what Jason said.
All right, what's the next question? The next question is, Jason, what are the 3 Oracle things you've been telling your clients today? Will the short-term, long-term implications of O1 become a top 3 item, or is that out of scope for what you do? O1 changes nothing for me because when I write code, it is just a function that takes in an object and returns an object. So the fact that like the error rate is lower is like an implementation detail, right? It should be as abstract as like when I hit this API, the fact that there's a load balancer behind this post request, I don't really care about, right? It's just which one is like more reliable. So okay, if it costs $4 but there's less downtime, is it worth it, right? Those are just like systematic trade-offs. The 3 Oracle things I say right now is if you're asking me about agents and you want more complex reasoning, it is because you did not try hard enough to think about what you want your system to do. And they go, yeah. As a consequence, what you should really be doing is you should be listing out all of the important SOPs of your company. So like every SOP, every standard operating procedure, and there's 4 columns. The probability the AI can do it, right? The dollar, like the economic value of having it done, the time you would save if the AI could do it, and how much more difficult would it be to make the AI do it in terms of like data review, safety, all that. And those 4 variables can get you in a dollar amount, right? It's gonna be like dollars times probability per like time times like labor. If you just sort by that, you will, instead of saying I want agents with complex reasoning, you get this is the economic value over time for every SOP that we can automate. And then you just like pick the ones that make the most sense. Right? It becomes like an expected value over time equation. And I think that makes it really easier. The second thing is like the report generation stuff that I talk about. And I think the third thing is going to be just that like RAG is not going away, but there's a subset of problems that can be done with long context. And it's your job to figure out what subset of problems that can be done with long context and just a lot of chain of thought. Right. And like if you can detect this is a problem that can use long context, you should use it. But you can't not build the RAG system. The end.
It's kind of insane, your first Oracle point on agents that you just mentioned. Coincidentally, today, I just had another office hour with someone, and they were asking, hey, Eugene, that thing you wrote about what we learned about from a year of building LLMs with those authors. I noticed agents was conspicuously missing. And they asked me why. I was like, not all of us really think agents are really ready for prime time yet. And Jason's point is exactly it, right? People like just throw it to agents because they just don't really know what works. And instead, like what we've seen works is more like a DAG approach or state machine approach, right? More on the rails, and that's just better.
Can I try to answer this a little bit? Because I have like a mathematical.
Go for it.
So in like 2017, like you learn about backpropagation, and what you basically realize is that say I'm predicting a dog or a cat, and my model has a 51 dog, 49 cat prediction. That model makes the same prediction as 90% dog, 10% cat prediction, because the threshold is just 50%, right? But if that mistake is, if you made that prediction incorrectly, the learning is different, right? Like if you made 51 49 and then you were wrong, like you don't learn that much. But if you made 90 10 and then you were wrong, you learn more. But the issue is that wasn't really included in like the computation for backpropagation. Like the gradients don't actually work that way. And so a lot of people at the time had this idea of like serendipity or something, not serendipity, but something by surprise. It's like a backpropagation by surprise paper. And basically it was like the more wrong you are, the more you backprop against the model. And what they found was that like the learning rates, like you would converge faster. And my takeaway was, if you are confidently wrong and then you are proven wrong, you learn more. If you have no opinions and you're wrong, like it doesn't hurt you enough to like really change how you feel about things. That's kind of how I think about it. Like just being wrong just
I
makes you learn more.
I fully agree about this. With this, in fact, I've been wrong so many times and so painfully wrong. I can't even remember all of it. But I know there were some times where I was so wrong that I just want to like literally sink into the ground and just disappear from sight from the experts in the room. But then the thing is, I realized is that every time I was so wrong, the growth was immense. Right? It was like it's not just okay knowledge. It's not just knowledge update. It's like having the finesse, having the polish to admit that you were wrong, like ownership to own up, and then quickly iterate. I think there was this one great example. I think like some CEO, I think maybe Andy Jassy was sharing that. Okay, he was doing a presentation to Jeff Bezos, and then there was one slide where like Jeff Bezos just said, all the numbers here are wrong, all of the numbers, and he was like, "What do you mean they're wrong?" It's like they're just wrong based on anecdotes. And then okay, like in that point in time, he was able to handle it, with finesse, and then they follow up and everything, and that was great, right? So what I now realize, and Naval has this rule, is that if there are two paths, pick the harder one. I realize I just follow that rule. If there are two paths, just pick the harder one. And but does that mean that no one's gonna do the easy work? No one's gonna do the simple? No, because what's gonna be simple for you may be hard for other people, and that's a learning opportunity for other people. So try to groom and sponsor other people to do that. So yeah, I think I enjoy being wrong. That's why I enjoy like openly publishing my stuff with such strong opinions. I'm really hoping for people to correct me. And there was one time where I was corrected so thoroughly, right? Like my previous view was that LMs as a judge would not work.
Yeah.
In the sense, it's like Jason knows this, right? It's like I was like, come on, prove me wrong. And then Shreya spoke up, Hamel spoke up, Han spoke up. I spoke to so many people from Foundation Labs. They were like, hey, maybe it might work. Not right now, doesn't meet human level right now, but maybe in 12 to 18 months. And that was 3 months ago. But then I got proven wrong, and I updated my mental model, and I think it's for the better. So
Yeah.
I think if you want to play it safe, you want to protect your ego and not feel any negative emotions, it's okay. You don't have to be too strong about it. But I think there's definitely some positive benefits there.
Let me tell you another experiment that people did. So they did an experiment where in front of the subject were like two decks of cards. And both decks of cards had like black and red. Have you seen? Do you know this experiment? And so both decks of cards have like red and black cards, and basically like it's like if you pull a black card, we like zap you, and then if you pull a red card, we give you $1. And like both decks have different percentages of red cards and black cards. And what happened was like the choosing of which deck converged to like the correct deck, the optimal deck. But I think the experiment was like, oh, within like 40 cards, the human could figure out which one was the worst deck. But if you actually measure the stress response, your body could figure it out in like 12.
Wow.
Like within 12 cards, even as you reached for the deck that would shock, like that has a higher estimation of like probability of being shocked, it's like your hand like sweats more, right? But you're still reaching for the deck of cards. And so what this basically kind of taught me was like, not only is the violence of being wrong like an emotional reaction that makes you learn more,
Mm.
if you like move forward more like fearlessly, your like oh shit detector gets trained too.
And I also want to share one example. One related point here is that it's easier for you to overcome being wrong if you just completely let go of ego and emotion. I know I say it very simply. If you just completely let go of ego and emotion is very hard to let go. And every time I see that when, let's say we have a review in the room and then there's someone who's clearly wrong, but it's the ego and emotion that they've invested into the current approach that just makes them very reluctant to seek feedback. So the thing is, you can have two things. One of each. You can either be right a lot, be right fast, or you can protect your ego and emotion.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what you want.
Yeah. Another analogy. Say you're playing golf. I think it's like the learning golf example. Do you know this one example?
No.
Where the people who swing more often and have worse shots get better over time. So like there's two. Like, so one of them, it's like you gotta get ready and like really like you want to make sure every swing is perfect. That person gets better slower than the guy who's like, let me just keep hitting it.
It goes to your pottery example.
Yeah.
Pounds of clay instead of pots.
Yeah, and like it's the immediate feedback because the feedback loop is so tight. Then you have like the
Yep.
stress response of being wrong, so your body is like physically reacting to the feeling of wrongness. So you're like right more often, and then when you are wrong, you like learn more because like the emotional commitment of being right is broken so much that like your weights change. So it's like, okay, well, I just have to be like wrong more often. That's just the volume.
If you think about it, right, if you do something that you're right and it's easy, you think about it, you're not really growing because you were right and it is easy. So if you actually want to grow, you should do more stuff where you were wrong or it was hard. Of course, that depends on what you want in life as well. If you like, yeah, I think growth is fun. So that's why ideally we try to do that.
So funny. I'm full of these anecdotes about being right or wrong. I think, yeah, what was the last? Oh yeah, like you know you're on your own path when the path disappears, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the same again. It's the same thing. Just like you just have to like if you want to always be right, then you have to kind of like walk down
And
the
and
current
that's the
path.
thing about Jason. The thing about Jason, and I think this is the thing that I did when I spoke to Jason. This was the first thing I said to him at AI Engineer. That was the first time I met him. He was like, "Hey Jason, I mean like I admire the way he lives. He just lives for himself. He just does his own thing. He doesn't really care what other people say. He doesn't really give a shit. I mean, he just lives very authentically. So that's the thing, right? If you're on your own path and you're wrong, it's okay. It's your own path. Or maybe you are right, and society has another different of right, and that's fine. Who cares? Just do your thing.
Yeah.
But that's getting a bit more philosophical. I know we have two more questions. Why don't we go through them?
Oh, are there 2 more questions? Oh, I'll let you answer. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick, and I'm gonna have
Okay. And now I'm gonna wait for you to. I think you can take more of the DAG and the state machine one because
Alright,
that's
sure.
yeah. So fast HTML and web components. I'm not sure what Hamel and Jeremy Howard is gonna think about my response, but personally, what I found is that fast HTML returns this thing called, I think it's called FT components, or I think of it as fast components, in the sense that it's returning HTML wrapped up in Python code. So I found that not so straightforward to understand, but also that could be because I already have some existing familiarity with fast HTML. So maybe let me just share my screen again to show you what I'm looking at. So you can see things like this. Like this is FT component. Okay, here's a div, here's a header one, here's a paragraph, and it returns it to be something like this. For some reason, this took a longer learning curve than I would have liked. So if it's list, it's like something like this. So this is how I'm kind of used to it. This is how I'm kind of used to it, looking at it, and this is how this is very visually intuitive to me, right? The HTML approach. So this took a bit more time for me to pick up, and everything is in FT components. You can sort of do everything in FT components. Let me just share how that looks in the small app. Actually, let's just look at Jeremy's app, which is the ideal way you should be building it. So you can see over here we are rendering a row. So I think this is a table row, and then you just iterate through table row, and then of course we wrap it around an input. And then where we actually want to show the table, This would be a table row mapped to the table header. We include the header, and then so this is how we create the header, the table row of a table header. And then the values would be render row. Essentially, we just take all the rows and then we wrap it up in the table head, and then the header. That was not so. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Shoot. Because Jason's in the washroom, we can't share the screen. But I guess we just have to wait for him to come back. Yeah. So yeah, that's my take on FastHTML. I mean, for me, who I'm more familiar with HTML, exactly, Jason needs to approve it, because he's the one that's hosting it. So that's how I think about FastHTML. But that said, beyond that, FastHTML is pretty amazing in the sense that you can put HTML and CSS everything within a single Python file. That's all you need. You just need a single Python file. So yeah. Hey Jason, could you actually share the screen? Allow the screen share.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so you can see over here, just going through the FastHTML documents again. You can see over here, if we want to show a list, that's how you would use it. It's like a list and then li1, li2, li3. Whereas for me, because I'm more familiar with FastHTML, with HTML, it was actually easier. And then over here, here's the example of how it would look in HTML. If we just convert that HTML to Python code. So over here, we just render the table row and then the input. And of course, to actually render the table, we create the header, which is a map of table header on the table columns dictionary. And then we, again, map it through the rows. And then finally, we have the table header and table row. So what this means is that you don't have to actually write any HTML anymore.
Do you want to interrupt for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you see the end stream button on the top corner of the stream?
No, I don't.
Okay, I need to jump to a call.
Let's end the stream.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Let's end the stream. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to address all the questions, guys. Yeah, we'll come back.
Just at us on Twitter or something. I got to jump out to a paid call, so I got to make sure I take it. All right.
Enjoy. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Sorry for the abrupt ending. Cheers.